All right, guys, it is 10 a.m. Some of you were like, hey, yeah, I love my grades. Other of you are like, I really hate you. So your grades were posted at around 8 o'clock last night for your video and your midterms. Put your phones away, check after class. Put your phones away. Put your phones away. Don't be like that little girl in like junior high. It's like, oh my goodness, he texted me. I need to text him back. All right. Your grades are not that important, I promise you. At least not as much as your boy crush. All right. So let's pray and we'll go ahead and get started. I'll clarify some things regarding the midterm and the video. And then we're going to be talking about turning boys into men today. So, Father God, we thank you so much for this class. Thank you so much for these students. And most of all, we thank you for your presence that fills us up, your presence that sanctifies us, transforms our mind, turns us into something new. Lord, we thank you for your newness in Christ. And Lord, today we just want to celebrate that newness by giving you ourselves as a living sacrifice. We love you. We thank you for this class. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, so some of you did really well on like the multiple choice, true and false, and the short answer, but then you didn't really answer the questions for the essay part. You'll there may have been like multiple parts. You'll answer like one part of the question, but then you may have gotten points off for not answering like all of the question. You guys understand that? And so, in fact, that's actually, if you don't think you got a good grade on your video, some of you, it's because you didn't answer the question. So, there was one that was on arts and entertainment. And for those of you that did arts and entertainment, what was the thing that you had to address? Witchcraft. So some of you did arts and entertainment, but you didn't address witchcraft. You just kind of went on your own tangent, which is fine. It just didn't answer the question. So I did take points off. And for those of you that turned it in late, there was one person, phenomenal video, but got a failing grade because this person turned it in late. And I feel awful about this because it was like, I want to give you an A, but I can't. My goal is not to fail you. I want you to succeed in this class. Just make sure in the future you're answering the questions, not just like, I'm okay with you giving your opinion, just answer the question. You understand? Some of you got points taken off because you didn't have much of a solution. Again, like your solution had to be like innovative. Your solution had to be something that wasn't just this like ethereal thing, that was like a concrete solution. And then if you went overtime, I had to take points off because what was the time limit? 5 minutes. Some of you went over 5 minutes. So anyways, most of you did really well. So like, don't freak out. It's all good. There was some of you, I was blown away by your videos. Yasu, I love his video. It was like this like very Japanese video, like something you'd find like on a Japanese YouTube channel. It was amazing. Josiah, I loved your kind of like almost like a review type of thing, a review video you'd find on YouTube. Amy, I loved your kind of, it was just very like, I loved all your GIFs that you kind of added to your video. Those visual components really helped. For those of you that don't know how to do those, there was some of you that just kind of like put stuff in your video and showed me, that's still visual. So like any of those things, I had like morning news channels, I had different Felipe, I think you're interviewing yourself. That was really cool. He like had this like cutaway of like this audio of like John Smith. And then like I just love that really creative element. Felipe was just like, yeah, I know who John Smith is. I was like talking to Felipe, and he's just like, I don't know who Felipe is, but I know who John Smith is. But anyways, you guys have 2 more assignments. These assignments are a little bit easier. So your next one's going to be a case study. So I'm going to give you in next probably week or two, I'm going to give you a case study about a preteen who actually went to jail because he or she committed a crime. And your job is to look at that case study and tell me within 2 pages of written English why you think that child deserves justice or mercy. Okay? Then your last assignment, you're going to, instead of like a final test, we're going to have like a couple weeks where we discuss how to throw a preteen party, like a preteen event. And so you guys will then create your own preteen event. So for those of you that are like, well, maybe I'm not really this super academic, but I'm a little bit more creative, that's going to be for you. You guys get as creative as you want. So there's still chances for you to, remember, it's about the average grade, not about like your individual assignment. You all good? Cool. All right, so training boys to be men. I do have a PowerPoint. I wish I could put it up here, but for some reason, it's not working with my MacBook. So I will put this PowerPoint up later onto Cams so you guys can have this for your reference, as well as a curriculum that I wrote specifically for preteen boys. I will also put that on Cams, so you will have that available to you for your reference if you want to use it in the future. IHOP has this kind of rule about their written stuff. You guys know IHOP, International House of Prayer? They have this rule of like, our copyright is your right to copy. So anything that I give you guys, you're welcome to use, abuse, change to your own situations, and like it's all for you guys, okay? So anything that's on Cams, it's free for you guys to use. So I have to go back to when Jesse, my son, was 12 years old. So when he was 12, I realized that I had a responsibility as his father figure to help him become a man. Now, I realized that I didn't become a man until like my wife's dad really came alongside and was just like, hey, here's how you do taxes, here's how you buy a car, here's how you do the yard, like here's how you do these things, like simple things you would think I know, but I just didn't know. And so then with Jesse's dad kind of in and out of the picture, I was really the consistent father figure in his life. Now, for those of you, I don't know if I told you this or not, but my wife, her ancestors are actual samurai. And for my son, that was like a huge thing. I mean, if you're related to samurai, I mean, I'd be like, yes, that's me. I don't care if I'm only like 2% Japanese, but yes, I'm a samurai. So my son is a quarter Japanese, but he's always identified with like his warrior heritage. His grandpa served in Vietnam. His great-grandpa served in World War II. In fact, his great-grandpa was one of the first Japanese Americans to enlist in the U.S. Army. He got rejected 6 times because of the anti-Japanese sentiment that was going on in America at that time because of Pearl Harbor. But he was an American citizen born in Hawaii. And so he wanted to like serve in the military. And so my son like just loves his military heritage. He had an ancestor at the Alamo, and then obviously his samurai relatives hundreds of years ago. So my wife's last name is Goka, and I'm going somewhere with this. This is important to give you context. So my wife's last name is Goka, which is not really a common Japanese name, because where that name originated was my wife's samurai ancestors, like they rebelled against their father, who they saw as a wicked lord. So there was 5 brothers. They left their dad to start their own house. And so Goka literally means house of 5. We have the samurai family crest hanging in our dining room. We've done a whole bunch of research, actually done some interviews in Japan, and so we've been able to verify this. And so in the course of all this, when Jesse was 12, I began to do some research and more research into samurai culture. And so when a young man is at 13, like basically his 13th birthday, what the samurais would do, they would like take the young man hostage. And there would be like this mentor relationship where the samurai would teach the young man combat and morality and ethics. And so we had this idea we're going to take Jesse hostage. Some of the books that we used during this time, and you guys can write these down, they'll be on your PowerPoint on cams later. Raising a Modern Day Knight by Robert Lewis, Fathered by God by John Eldridge, Rite of Passage by Jim McBride, Hope for a Fatherless Generation by Doug Stringer, The Book of Five Rings by Miyamoto Musashi, and Bushido, The Soul of Japan by Anatsu Nitobe, and of course the Bible. And so for 8 months from the time of, it was January, I guess, of whenever he was 12. And then, yes, that's a specific year. So from 8 months, and then he turned 13 in October of that year. So for that whole year, he had a different mentor that took him hostage for a whole month. And each of those months, he learned a different virtue. And Bushido is the name of the samurai code that we kind of gleaned from as a way of teaching him virtues. Now, we had to be very careful that we did not include like Eastern mysticism and like Eastern philosophies. But honestly, all of these Bushido virtues were very translatable to Scripture. So here's the things he learned. In March, he had a mentor that taught him honesty. April, heritage. May, compassion. June, loyalty. July, honor and respect. August of that year was integrity. September was wisdom. And October was courage. And so we actually had this, his very first samurai sword, which was a dagger that was used for ritual suicide. And it's important that you know these 3 swords for his training, because even though these are significant in the life of a samurai, these were also significant symbols for him as a Christian man. So that tanto, which was used for committing ritual suicide, whenever you were defeated, that's called seppuku or harikiri. And basically, if you're defeated, you as a warrior would stab your stomach and your foe would cut off your head. And so for Jesse, that meant putting to death the deeds of his flesh. Okay? And so that was his very first blade that he got. And he had to earn that blade by going through these 8 months of different mentors, learning these different virtues. And so at age 13, his final test of courage was to give this public speech at 13 in front of 50 people of family and friends and his mentors. His mentors took time to speak affirmations to him. We had this ceremony at this Japanese restaurant, and there was these tables, and it was his first time he actually got his first bite of filet mignon. We're not messing around here. And we didn't just buy some costume this tanto dagger. We actually spent the money and bought a real Damascus steel blade. And then we had friends who were like, well, aren't you afraid of what a 13-year-old is going to do with a dangerous weapon? I said, I'm more afraid of what he's not going to do if I teach him passivity. So we taught him how to respect the swords, how to use the swords. We taught him that they weren't just art to display on your wall, but that he actually later on learned how to use them. So when he was 17, we went through another period of training for his wakizashi, which was his short sword, and those swords were used for indoor battle. And so for him, it was the symbol of the battles he faces in his small world of influence. And so at 16, he had this kind of covenant he made with some of his mentors he still had, who he allowed to hold him accountable, waking up at 5 a.m., exercising every morning, reading all these books and doing all these things. And he completed about 90% of this list over the course of this year. And for a 16-year-old teenager, to actually say what you're going to do and do it, it's very, very big. And so at his 17th birthday, we took him on top of Prayer Mountain and presented him his wakizashi. Then at graduation, because he was the first on his dad's side of the family to graduate high school. And so that was a big deal for him. So his graduation ceremony was his last sword ceremony where he got his katana. The katana was used for outdoor combat, and it represented the trials he'd face out in the world being an independent man. And so only a samurai could carry these three swords together. If anyone other than a samurai carried these three swords together, it was considered treason and they could die. And so we told Jesse, we're like, hey, listen, this is serious business. This is not just art to just put on your shelf and collect dust. Like these are important symbols. And it was important that he earned these symbols. If he didn't graduate high school, he wouldn't have gotten his last sword. If he didn't at least complete 75% of that covenant he made, he wouldn't have gotten his short sword. If he didn't actually complete those 8 months of mentorship, he wouldn't have gotten his dagger. You see, boys are not going to become men if we keep giving them participation trophies. It's not enough to participate. We want to draw out excellence. The reason why a lot of men are not competing at the same level as previous generations is because the standard has become so low that we're just satisfied with them showing up. Oh, just show up, just be a warm body. And so we told Jesse, we're like, that's not the definition of a man. Yes, show up, but there's actually things that you need to do in order to be a man. Like, I can show up and just sit there and watch sports. That doesn't mean I'm a man. I can show up and just binge Netflix for 12 hours. That doesn't mean I'm a man. I'm a man when I take responsibility for the areas of my life. I'm a man when I take responsibility for my wife. I'm a man when I take responsibility for my children. I'm a man when I take responsibility for my job. I'm a man when I take responsibility for my relationship with Christ. Honestly, if you're in here and you're like, oh, well, it's all Jesus' word, I don't have to do anything, you're not mature. You're still a child. And you need to come back to that loving relationship where you're like, that partnership where God does his part and we do our part. Because we do have responsibility. So we had these sword ceremonies. I wish I can show you the pictures up here, but you'll just have to see them later on. I put pictures of the actual swords that he got. Miyamoto Musashi, basically, he has this symbol, and he was one of the main riders when it came to samurai fighting. And so we put that symbol around his sword at the top of his hilt. Well, all of this happened, and Jesse was doing really well. And we went through different stages. And honestly, I would be lying if I said that during his teenage years that this was the end-all, be-all, the solution to him having a bad attitude problem. It wasn't. He still had bad attitude from time to time. He was a teenager. Do you know any teenager that never has a bad attitude? I don't know them. If you know them, I want to meet you. I want to meet them because I'm just that's amazing. I've never seen that before. So there would be times that Jesse would, because we homeschooled him for 9th and 10th grade while we were at CFNI, and then we put him into public school for 11th and 12th grade where he did ROTC. And so and he hated math, so while we were homeschooling, he would have these fits of rage because he hated math. But all of this was to help him realize that we're not trying to keep you from being aggressive. God made the male persona partly aggressive. What we want is to bridle that aggression and steer it in the right way. Because if all we're doing is believing that masculinity is toxic, and we're basically chopping off every man's manhood, and we're telling him you can't be aggressive, what's going to happen when you're looking for someone to fight for you and all the men have been castrated? That's why female empowerment to a level is fantastic. But then I know all these women, they're like, don't hold the door for me. I am all woman. I can hold the door for myself. But then what you're doing is now you have men that are afraid to open doors for women. Now instead of training men to be gentlemen, now men are just waiting for the girl to ask him out on a date. I'll just wait for the girl to make the next move. There's a whole generation of very passive men. Your nephews, your sons, your preteen boys, the reason that they're addicted to video games is because you're not offering them an adventurous outlet as an alternative. That's why we put them in sports. That's why we put them in Boy Scouts. That's why we go hunting with them and fishing with them and hiking with them. That's why we go out in the world and go on adventures and go camping trips. Because they're looking for adventure. They're looking to be the hero. That's why they love Star Wars. That's why they love Marvel. That's why I don't like the direction Marvel is going, because they're like, oh, well, we have enough male superheroes. Let's stop doing male superheroes. Over the next 10 years, you're going to see a huge decrease of male superheroes and a large increase of female superheroes, which I'm not against. But men still need their role models. Young boys still need their role models of like, I need to know what it looks like to be heroic. I need to know what it looks like to make sacrifices. So the children's pastor at our church at the time got wind of what we were doing with Jesse. And because she was his children's pastor, she was invited to his first sword ceremony. So what ended up happening was she was just like, hey, can we translate this to some sort of like Bible study for preteen boys? I said, sure, let's see what we can do. So for us at the church, children's ministry ended at 6th grade, and preteens are typically 5th, 6th, 7th grade. But for that children's ministry ended at 6th grade, and so at 7th grade they started youth. So we had a summer where we would say, okay, well, let's have like a girls' class and a boys' class and talk about like masculinity and femininity. So I was in charge of the masculinity class. And what we did, we took kind of the core attributes of Bushido, the way of the warrior, what it's called. And we had 4 weeks where we discussed integrity, honor, respect, loyalty, courage. And here's what we did. We would come in, we would have some manly breakfast. Lots of meat, pancakes. Like, we didn't have no crepes or blintzes or strawberries and champagne sauce. I don't know what you had. So, no, we had like manly breakfast. Then we had a time of worship because we told them, we're like, just because you're a man doesn't mean that you're exempt from worship. Worship is a manly act. David was a manly dude. And we talked about David a lot because we're like, here's a dude that cut off a giant's head. Here's a dude that like laid to waste complete armies. I wish I could do a whole semester on David because there's so much interesting stuff about his life that you don't learn about in church. Like, did you know he actually betrayed Israel and fought for the enemy's side for a time in his life? Did you know that? Like his mighty men, they were all rebels to Israel and fought for the opposing army. So then that's a side note. It's just interesting stuff. So we're like, David's a manly dude, and he's worshiping before God. So we had time of worship. Then we had actual activity. Like, so we encouraged them to bring their Nerf guns. So we had Nerf battles. Some of the dads brought their actual guns. And then I brought swords. And then we had times of like, obviously there's no bullets in the guns, don't worry. This is church. We had some sort of wisdom, I promise you.
It's Texas.
Texas. It is Texas. So we had times of them learning like how do you clean a gun? How do you sharpen a blade? Like, how do you respect your weapon? And we made sure there was activity every single time. There was small groups going on. There was teaching going on. There was basically, we had videos, media, testimonies. We gave them weekly challenges. Like, we actually told them, hey, you need to do this by the time we meet next week, because we're going to have a ceremony for everybody that completes this course. We're going to have like an affirmation ceremony. But if you don't do what's required of you, this isn't going to be handed to you for free. You got to do the work. So by the time that 4 weeks was done, we had the ceremony, and we actually had a sword, and we knighted all the young boys and gave them a token of like their manhood. And there's 12 of them. We still, to this day, we still call them the 12 disciples. Like, and they were close. Like, they were so close that like years later, they're still hanging out and friends with each other. And some of these guys didn't know each other from like before they started. One of the testimonies that came out of this, like a year later, we did this again. And one of the guys that did it the year before, he was just like, I was a bully. And I didn't realize until I took this class that I needed to steer my aggression in the right way. So I stopped being a bully, and I started protecting those kids that were being bullied. And that was his testimony. He was just like, I learned how to direct my aggression in a righteous way. One of the reasons we hate war is not because war is evil, it's because we get this idea in our head that war is somehow murder, and then we don't like it when people go off to war and die. War is nasty business, but war itself is not evil. In fact, if we don't teach each other to fight, anytime something comes against us, we're just going to fall. Let me give you one particular scripture that backs up this point. So in the book of Judges, at the very beginning, it talks about how the new generation of Israelites are coming into the promised land. And that there was all these enemies that were defeated under the reign of Joshua. And there were still these enemies that were left for the new generation to fight. And God says specifically, I am not going to destroy them on your behalf. I've left them in place because you need to learn how to fight. When I was saved, the very first thing, like I had these like Joshua enemies that God like eradicated in my life. That one of those enemies was like a foul mouth, cussing like a sailor. Like overnight, it was like gone. There's no like temptation. I've talked to you about that. Well, then one of the other enemies that God left in my path was lust. And I had to learn how to fight that enemy. Because God did not simply say, I'm going to destroy this enemy for you. I'm leaving this enemy to teach you how to fight. Because you need to learn how to overcome. You cannot overcome the enemies in your life if you are not a soldier of Christ. That's why I get really irritated personally when we're like anti-war, anti-soldiers, anti-veterans. These are people that we should be looking up to as examples to us of people that sacrificed for their country, for a higher purpose. But no, we're spitting on them. We're blasting them on social media. We're taking away their benefits. And we're treating them like garbage. Why? Because they fought for their country? Because they're fighters? So we commissioned those young boys, and they prospered. Some of them, I'm not going to lie to you, some of them fell away, and that was because they left kind of the relationship. When you're a squad, you're strongest when you're together, and then when you kind of pull away from the squad, it's really easy to fall back into temptation. And so one of the things that over the course of a couple of years as we started to do this thing Then, like, we were starting to transition to CF&I, and so then I passed the sword on to another mentor within the children's ministry area at the time, and I said, hey, now it's your job to mentor these young guys. And he was with me the whole time, so he knew, like, what was going on. And so we even had, like, a ceremony of, like, me passing the baton. Like, we love our ceremonies, right? Because it's just like, they're like milestones that we can look back and remember. Okay, that's when I did this. That's when I did this. That's when I did this. Almost like memorial stones. So why do I personally have a passion for ministering to preteen boys? Here's why. I personally want to expose a couple of lies. So 4 lies that I believe that we are believing as a culture that are outright deceptions. Number 1, the goal of a man is just to be a nice guy. I don't believe that whatsoever. Because if we're just nice, then all we're doing is, then we're going to be a doormat. We're just going to be a doormat for people to walk on. If we're just a nice person, oh, Mr. Chris is so nice. I'm sure probably none of you say that, and that's okay. That's okay. In fact, I don't know why I do kids ministry, because all the guys are nice, and I'm like, you need to rise up. I'm trying to pull out excellence. I'm trying to pull out the overcomer. I'm trying to pull out, like, the Holy Spirit and the gospel in these kids. You know, if I'm just nice, I'm not going to rattle any cages. If I'm just nice, I'm not going to speak truth, because truth offends people. If I'm just nice, I'm not going to preach the gospel, because the gospel is offensive. Have you heard what the gospel is? The gospel is give up your life to follow Jesus whom you can't see. That's offensive to some people. Honestly, if I'm in a moment where I'm being asked to give up my life, give up my rights, give up my interests, give up my time, give up my money, give up my life, that's offensive, people. Nice people don't preach the gospel. Powerful people preach the gospel. Number 2, lie that I'm looking to expose in the life of preteen boys. There's nothing wrong with being a little feminine. Real men don't wear pink. Real men wear robes of righteousness. Let me say that again. Real men don't wear pink. Real men wear robes of righteousness. Now, if you're a man and you wear pink, that's not the point of this. I don't care if you wear pink or all of its derivatives. One person was just like, I wear salmon. I'm just like, you're wearing fish? Like, what? I don't understand. Why would you put, are you like Lady Gaga and like just raw fish all over you? But with the increase of single mother homes over the last several decades, there has been a huge push in basically young boys becoming like little girls. That's why we get confusion like the transgender thing, because there's a lot of moms that can't handle their rowdy boys. You may have like grandpa that gives little Johnny a gun, and mom is just like, I don't want to teach my son violence. Well, so she takes away the gun and gives him a graham cracker. Eat the graham cracker instead. It's sweet. I want you to be sweet. Little Johnny, what he does, he eats the graham cracker in the shape of a gun and shoots his mom at. He's just like, pow, pow, just trying to play with his graham cracker gun. I've seen it time and time and time again. And you may have boys that are playing with their Barbies, and you're just like, I'm just letting them express myself. And the reason I say myself is because a lot of times parents are just looking to treat their children like little dolls. I want to dress them. I want to take pictures of them. I want to post them on my Instagram. Because look how good of a parent I look because of how good my child looks. Now, my Instagram feed sucks because I have no little kids. I'm going to be honest. You look at my Instagram feed, you're like, Chris, this is boring. You need to do something with your Instagram. I'm trying, believe me. So, this particular issue becomes a huge struggle, especially for millennials and Gen Z. There is a woman whom I highly respect. And she's like, Chris, I loved when you work at CFNI because you actually, can't see all the stuff in your pants. Your pants are actually loose, and your shirt is actually loose. Like, honestly, nobody wants to see me in skin-tight pants and skin-tight shirts. Nobody wants that, all right? I don't want that. You don't want that. But what would happen if I'm just like, I'm just expressing myself? And I come in and dressing like a woman. Now, by law, y'all can't say nothing. You can judge me silently and be like, oh my goodness, my professor's a drag queen. And that'd probably be the line at which I get fired, I promise you. Yeah. But by law, I could come in and do it. And then I could probably sue the school if they fire me because I'm expressing myself. But I'm not looking, personally, I'm not looking to train my boys to express themselves. I'm looking for them to express the heart of God. I want them to express their masculinity. I want them to express their aggression. I want to go out and teach them competition. And then I want to reward them for doing well. I want to let them know that it's okay to play with guns in a responsible way. It's okay that you want to, play these violent video games. The reason they're playing them is because they don't have any other outlet. Now, truth be told, the video games are lulling us to sleep and creating more passivity, but it's because we don't have anything else. We want explosions and we want big, huge fights and wars and all this sort of stuff. And God has put a piece of that, of himself inside. If you think God is not a God of war, you have not read your Bible. If you think Jesus is just some nice guy, you neglect the time where he flipped over the money tables and basically rebuked the religious leaders publicly. If you think that God is not a warrior, then why would he send Jesus to defeat the enemy? Jesus was the manliest one of all. Yes, he worshiped. Yes, he prayed. Those are not feminine things. Those are as manly as anything else. So number 3, the lie that I'm looking to expose in the life of preteen boys is, I don't have to do anything to be a man. It's just a biological fact. I was born with the DNA. I got the goods, so all I have to do is sit back and relax and let life happen to me. The worst thing you can teach your children in your ministry or in your family is just to sit back and let life happen. Because sometimes life really sucks. And sometimes life comes at you with some pretty awful stuff. And so if you're just sitting back and letting life happen to you, then you're letting all this junk influence you, and that's why we have a whole generation that's depressed and nihilistic and just says life is meaningless. Because we're just letting life happen to them, rather than teaching them how to set goals, how to achieve their goals, how to look at, hey, this is the type of man I want to be. This is what I'm going to go for. Now, I'm like many of you, where at January 1, I'm thinking about New Year's resolutions. Who does New Year's resolutions? I know I do. I had a whole list of them. And, I didn't want to call them New Year's resolutions because I break all my New Year's resolutions. So I was like, this year I'm going to call them goals. It's like, these are my goals. And so I had a goal of reading X amount of books. I had a goal of writing X amount of books. Now, Corona happened, and basically everything fell apart. My life got so busy because of Corona, it's not even funny. Like, my life tripled in busyness because of Corona. Because now instead of doing a task that takes me 30 minutes, this one task is now taking me like 90 minutes because I have to clean or sanitize or virtually have to think about all the nuances that go along with that. Like, this class, I have not spent this much time behind the scenes than I have for this class in terms of teaching. Because usually a lot of the stuff we do happens in the classroom. I personally, and I've told you this before, I don't like this class online because relationship can't happen. So if I'm just living my life where I'm just like, okay, well, I'm just going to let life happen to me, and Corona happens, like, how many of you know some very depressed people right now because of Corona? I know some, like some Christians. Because they're just letting life happen to them rather than saying, okay, this happened, now I can readjust and keep living my life. Just because Corona happened doesn't give me an excuse not to achieve my goals. I keep moving forward. It's okay if I keep moving forward with mask. It's okay if I keep moving forward with hand sanitizer. It's okay if I keep moving forward learning new skills. But I have to keep moving forward. There is things I want to achieve in my life. Dreams that God has put in my heart. One of the dreams for me and my wife is we want to foster kids. We want to foster sibling groups, birth to 18. And so we moved from our Mansfield apartment, got a house in Midlothian. We got rid of our 2 really junky cars and got a nicer SUV that could fit 7 people. We rearranged our schedules to where I had a really flexible schedule that I can like pick up kids from school and whatnot. And so we have different things that we're achieving along the way because guess what? I don't care if Corona happens or not. I am going to do what God has asked me to do. And that resolve does not happen because I'm nice. That resolve happens because I have set my face like a flint and refuse to move from the dream that God has put in my heart. It may be delayed, but it doesn't mean it's not going to happen. You got to keep moving forward. Who's here seen Meet the Robinsons? Disney movie? Keep moving forward, keep moving forward. Yes, love that movie. 4th lie. Exposing the lie that it's okay to be a lone ranger. All right? That it's okay to be a lone ranger. What that means is, like, there's all these boys thinking it's okay to just be alone by themselves, just playing video games, watching anime, and hanging on Netflix. But we are stronger when we're together. We are stronger when we are together. In a war, the 2 strongest places in any war is number 1, in the general's tent, which is where Jesus is, and number 2, with your squad, because they can look at all of your blind spots. Raise your hand if you got some blind spots. I know I do. She's raising 2 hands. I got 10 blind spots. I got 20 blind spots. So if you got some blind spots, you need some people in your life that are going to look over those blind spots. I told you my blind spot is sarcasm. And over the course, especially teaching this class, because I know I can be sarcastic in this class. So when I leave this, the Lord is like gently reminding me, Chris, I told you about this. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And then my wife becomes the voice of the Lord too, you know. And the reason why God put families, one of the reasons why we have like the nuclear family structure is because we can look after one another. We can take responsibility for one another. A lot of times accountability relationships don't work because of selfishness. Honestly, it's not going to work if you just show up to a program and be like, I'm here for an accountability partner, and then you're trying to be vulnerable with someone you just met 5 minutes ago. Anybody been in that situation? That's really hard. The more you know someone and the more that person knows you, the more you can help each other. And let your kids call you out on your junk. That's okay. Like, they're not necessarily being disrespectful. There's a time when my son will be like, hey, you told me this, but you did this. And he's just like, so what is it? Do I follow what you say or follow what you do? And I'm just like, well, do what I say, and thank you for showing me that I didn't do what I say, So now he looked over my blind spot. And then honestly, there's plenty of times where I had to apologize to my son because I'm just like, I was not being a good example. I'm sorry. There's times I had to tell my son, listen, and especially now that he's an adult, and he's kind of living more independently, there's areas of vulnerability that both of us have. I'm just like, hey, we're living in the same house and we have a good relationship. Let's look after one another. And there's things that he can talk to me, he can talk to his mom about. And then there's things that he'd rather talk to mama about because mom's going to give him a big hug and say, it's all good, baby. Me, I'm just like, grow up, be a man, get it done. No, I'm just kidding. I'm a little bit more softer than that, I promise. So, 3 questions when we're thinking generationally, and we'll close up with this. When you're thinking of your children, whether it's in your family or whether it's in your ministry, think about these questions. What kind of men do you want marrying your daughters? Because guess what? It's CF and I. Your children may be marrying your neighbor's children. Like if I was in that situation, I'd be going over to the neighbor boy and helping him raise him to be a man. It's like, I don't know if he's going to marry my daughter one day. And if he is, I want to make sure that kid is got good, solid foundation. What kind of men do you want marrying your daughters? Honestly, I have a son. I don't have any daughters. I wish I had daughters. I believe God's kept daughters away from me because I would be poor. Because daughters are my weakness. Little girls are my weakness. So honestly, 7-year-old girls, they'd be like, Mr. Chris, can I paint your nails? Sure, baby, whatever you want. True story happened at KFN. Miss Connie saw that. She's just like, Chris, don't do that again. If I had a daughter, I'd be like, can I have $500? Yes, little girl. Whatever you want, girl. So pretty. So what kind of man do you want fathering your grandkids? Video game addicts don't make good fathers. Just FYI. People that are addicted to sports more than they're addicted to raising their own kids don't make good fathers. What kind of man do you want fathering your grandkids? What kind of men do you want leading your country? No matter what country you're in. What kind of men do you want in positions of leadership? Of CF&I. Some of your kids are going to be the future leaders of CF&I. Some of your kids are going to be future leaders of Dallas. Some of your kids are going to be future leaders across the country or in Brazil or in Japan or wherever you're from. And it's up to you, it's going to be on you what type of leader they become. I'm thinking about 20 years from now, if they're like a little sapling now, I'm thinking, what is it going to take from me to make sure they grow up into a strong, rooted tree 20 years from now? It's going to take me taking responsibility for them, watering them, trimming them, making sure they're growing properly. It's going to take commitment. I'm looking 20 years in the future. It may be cute. Some of the stuff that you do with your kids. Some of the disrespectful things they say, they may shout at you, and you're going to take a little video of it. You know that Listen Linda video? Listen, Linda, listen, Linda. Like that mama, she was just saying, oh, this is so cute. Like that was disrespect. So what type of men are you wanting to train up for your future? For the future of your family, for the future of your country, for the future of your church, your ministry? That's the type of questions we need to be asking in the sense of training boys to be men. The last reason why I minister to preteen boys is because honestly, God loves boys. He loves their adventurous spirit. He loves their wildness. If you want a really good book to read that addresses this topic, read Wild at Heart from John Eldridge. Fantastic. Gets you into the psyche of a boy or a man. And it helps you realize that wildness that boys have It's not bad. Yes, they don't fit in public school because public school is made for kids who can just sit in their seat and obey instructions. That's what public school is made for, private school. So if you have a wild child, maybe homeschooling is the best option for you. If you have a wild child, honestly, take them hiking. Like, let them dream to become an astronaut and help them do whatever it takes to get to that dream. My son wants to be a mechanic, so my wife and I are doing everything we can right now to help him fulfill that dream. It takes time, it takes resources, it takes commitment. But he wants to be a mechanic. I'm just like, go for it, man. He wants to join the military after mechanic school. Go for it, man. He wants to work on tanks. Go for it. Don't settle for just watching YouTube and going down the rabbit hole for 12 hours. Go for whatever God's put in your heart and don't settle for anything less. That's a word for some of you. Stop settling. Stop settling. You may like a person and they don't meet the criteria of God's standard. Stop settling. You may be in a position that has nothing to do with God's dream for your life. Stop settling. The reason I love my wife so much is because she is never satisfied in life. She's just like, I refuse to settle. I refuse to settle. Because once I am satisfied, then there's nothing left to fight for. Love you guys. See you on Thursday. My wife will be much more gentle, I promise.